And what we're going to talk about was intermittent fasting, or periodic fasting, as the term varies. And I was introduced to it I was introduced to fasting probably over 20 years ago. I worked in when I came back to Canada in the late 90s. I did a 3.5-year internship in natural health care. And one of the things, of course, that we experienced was a whole series of various cleanses, kidney cleanses, colon cleanses, liver cleanses. I remember one day drinking 500 milliliters of olive oil with a lime squeeze chaser, because you gag if you taste the olive oil. And we just drink a shot of olive oil, have a bit of a lime squeeze or lemon squeeze just to get the taste in your mouth. And it was a gallbladder cleanse. And the all series of various cleanses that we tried. And the whole idea was to reduce the stress off that particular organ, that part of the body, and encourage the body to get rid of its undesirable content, things that were kind of trapped in there. And of course, the colon cleanse, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the master cleanse. We were drinking liters and liters of water every day, mixed with maple syrup, cayenne pepper. We also use Casera Sagrada, comfrey fenugreek, other things to actually support the whole process. But at the end of the day, one of the challenges with these type of cleanses was, of course, they quite often actually starve the body, especially when you're going for long periods of time. So you get into really low nutrient, deprivation over time. And so what we found is that part of the challenge was, yes, it was actually a healthy thing to do, and we've seen the animal kingdom. Animals often will fast during periods of times of illness. They just intuitively know that's what they need to do. And of course, we've done this historically for thousands of years. A lot of it was connected with religious concepts and religious rituals, but we never really understood why. We always intuitively knew that was a good thing. So about 7 years ago, when I got introduced into the concept of periodic fasting, which means instead of actually going through these long extended fasting sessions, which we did for colon cleansing, or very site-specific cleansing for kidneys or gallbladder or liver, what have you, we actually did a kind of global cleanse and a global cleansing process. And the kind of cool thing about it was is actually what actually happens when this whole process occurs. And so there's a few different ways to look at it and how cleansing truly works, or what happens when fasting occurs. And we use the term cleansing and fasting. I think people are kind of turning their nose up at the whole idea of cleansing, because it sounds very diarrhea-ish like. And then generally when we take a term and we have a new concept that comes out on the market or out into the public eye, of course it gets beaten to death, and we hear it from everybody, and everybody has their own take on it, and then we kind of become immune to the concept. So periodic fasting or intermittent fasting really is the technical term that you'll find if you go through the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and look through their database. You'll use that search term, and you'll find, of course, tons of information. What's extraordinary when, as I was going through and looking at some of the content and some of the research that was being done, it really seems that intermittent fasting really is the precursor to a whole host of amazing things that the body is actually capable of doing, and it instills or sets up this massive protective mechanism to the body through various mechanisms. Anyhow, so for example, one article I was looking at, they looked at using intermittent fasting for stroke clients. And they were using this whole process, this protective mechanism of fasting, to actually prevent further damage to the regions of the brain that were affected by the stroke, and actually bring in the cleanup crew. So what ends up happening, of course, when you go into a fasting state, once the blood sugar levels are down, the body's out of digestion, and then there's a whole mechanism of activity that's kind of spurred on by the secretion of growth hormone. And we know that going past the 24-hour mark into fasting, that in a male's body there will be anywhere up to a 2,000% increase in growth hormone secretion, and for females about 1,200%, as the data presently shows. And that's not really necessarily for building muscle, though it has that effect, but far beyond that, far beyond the muscle building effect that the world's kind of excited about, saying, well, I have all this free growth hormone, I'm going to go to the gym, take advantage of it. But really what happens, aside from, yes, the repair mechanism of muscle tissue certainly is a part of it, But that's really the smallest part of it, or for me, the least important part. What's really exciting is actually the recycling process the body goes through. So when it looks at cells and the organelles and the parts of cells, anything that's kind of defunct, that's not working properly, an old cell, the body in that state, in this fasting state, actually has the inclination to go through and actually get rid of and recycle these old parts of the body's cells through a process called autophagy. And autophagy is where the cells actually kind of digest themselves. They just kind of break down and dissolve away under the stimulus of this fasting state. Now, I'm sure there's hundreds of hormonal reactions and things going on that we can barely even begin to understand. But what we do know in a general concept is that with the increase of growth hormone, the decrease of insulin, and the reduction of the digestive process, the body is now able to go into a state of repair. And so autophagy really is one of the biggest, kind of the most exciting parts of it, where again, the body actually goes in and starts recycling old broken down bits. And the last thing we want to do is actually have old broken down cells that are still functioning, replicating, and reproducing their broken down state. And of course, we know that that can create a tremendous amount of unstable cellular development in the body, which is something we don't want. So the fasting state really sets us up for all these beautiful things to occur. But again, autophagy is really probably the most powerful and the most important piece. Again, the cleanup of the cellular debris. It also there's also cofactors that occur. We look at the inhibition of radical cell development, right? So we've heard the term about free radicals cell production, and this oxidative process, of course, can be a precancerous condition, and putting the body in this state where the body is actually able to repair and to eliminate a lot of the craziness that's going on inside of it is absolutely extraordinary. It's such a beautiful design, and what's unfortunate in this day and age is that we've kind of moved away from our natural design. We've moved away from these points in time where the natural food supply existed, the natural ability or necessity to move and be physically laborious throughout the day. All these things have disappeared, and now we're in this very artificial state. So we actually have to intelligently now go back and actually reintroduce artificially the things that used to appear so naturally in our environment. It's crazy when you really think about it, which is why so many people struggle, because we're trying to pretend, we're acting as if it's still 1925 and we're still on a bicycle going 20 miles down to the corner store. That's not the case. The whole framework has changed. So when we're looking at trying to reclaim our health, we do know, again, that intermittent fasting is really such a powerful way to go around it. Now, fasting can be intentional, which is, of course, looking at a 24-hour to 48-hour periodic fast. I've seen research on longer states, but we do know that within that 48-hour period, we're less likely to utilize muscle as a fuel source than going past into a 3, 4, 5-day fast, which I've done in the past, it's very challenging. I was watching a doctor. He's a retired physicist from NASA, and he's on a 26-day water fast, and he says he feels great, other than supplying vitamin and minerals supplements to his diet to provide some raw product to keep his body going. But you can survive a long period of time without food, but most people wouldn't do that. What we do know, of course, that most people can tolerate a 24-hour to a 48-hour fasting process. Staying inside that 48-hour window, of course, will minimize the risk of using muscle wastage for fuel, because, of course, in the presence of growth hormone, the body will not attack muscle tissue. It will indeed go after that fat tissue, which is really one of the big reasons people nowadays are using intermittent fasting for the weight loss part of it. But for me, like I said, weight loss is a beautiful side effect, but for me, that is the last thing on my list. What I'm more excited about is the ability for the body to reduce its own inflammatory process. The body to start healing itself. There's another fasting state also occurs when we go to sleep. And what was really interesting is that, now I can't remember this, I'm going to struggle for the information a little bit, but when they look at this 8-hour sleeping cycle, which is a fasting cycle, yet again, right? So another fasting state, the brain actually has a pump, and the brain will actually start pumping fluid through all its various parts of its membrane to actually flush out all the old material, all the metabolic waste products that kind of build up throughout the day. And getting adequate sleep in a fasting state, which is ideal, the body, of course, goes through this whole cleansing process, cleanses the brain out, right? And again, it's just a matter of somebody. Imagine at the end of the day, if you've ever been to a resort with a swimming pool. At the end of the day, the guy's out there with the hose, and he's just spraying all the crap off the pool deck. Well, it's kind of what the brain does in a fasting, sleeping state. The brain, and we're looking at over 6 hours of sleep, the brain will actually go in and start pumping fluid through it and actually kind of wash out the brain, wash out all the debris, getting ready, of course, for the activities of the following day, and really encouraging that whole process of neurogenesis. And of course, and we're in the state of autophagy, and we're cleaning up all these material, we're cleaning up all this debris. It's really quite fascinating. So fasting, intermittent fasting really is probably one of the most powerful tools I can think of to really move our health forward, to recover from illness, to recover from injury, to recover from the disease. And of course, a lot of these states, if you're under medical supervision for a disease state, then it's something you're certainly going to have to speak with your medical professional about to really make sure it's being done carefully. What else is there? The other aspect of looking at fasting states is playing around with timing, and of course the timing in which you eat all your food. Now, the Salk Institute in San Diego was doing some amazing research, and what they discovered phenomenally was that our stomach actually produces melatonin. Now, we know melatonin is secreted in the pineal gland, of course, in reference to the change in light, and under low lights, as the day kind of wanes on, the melatonin level should start increasing, slowly putting us in this whole sleep stage, getting us ready for the restorative sleep patterns. So why do you think melatonin would be secreted in the gut? Well, the other interesting part to that question is that why does the pancreas have receptor sites for melatonin? It just seems completely crazy. So what's fascinating, though, is that as the brain produces melatonin, the gut, of course, in turn is producing melatonin at the same time. And when the pancreas receives the melatonin docks on the pancreas actually is inhibited in producing insulin, which means, though, as the day wanes on, the caloric intake should be minimal. So when I look at shift workers and people that really struggle, from law enforcement to people working in the healthcare industry, the challenge is dealing with health. Controlling your health, because you're dealing with these weird sleep patterns, and of course you're also dealing with these chemical messengers that are occurring in the body. So when we look at designing programs for people and really trying to move people forward, what we find, it's not so much. Historically, when I thought about fitness and I started training people, we really only thought on a very surface level. What we're going to do is we're going to incur a bunch of overload response or overload stress in the form of exercise called weight training, and this will increase bone density, and this will increase muscle strength and the tensile capacity of our joints. So that's kind of how we thought. We thought if we increase the volume of air going down your lungs at any given time over a sustained period of time, then we would increase this whole thing called the aerobic state. And so we're looking at these very generic external stimuli, and we were just kind of plug and playing things on the outside, hoping it'll all work out for the better. Well, the challenge is, of course, the failure rate is very high. And yes, in the beginning, even with poor health and even with poor direction, the body will change. I mean, I was having a conversation with a client of mine yesterday over lunch. And I was kind of laughing, saying, the funny thing is that the human body, as long as you can take it and stress it, as long as you don't kill it, it's going to recover. So if I put you under a tremendous amount of stress, off and on, physical stress under, let's say, mechanical load, you have to become stronger. So I think, unfortunately, what happens within the fitness industry is that the fact that we didn't kill somebody and they got leaner and stronger, everybody's high-fiving themselves, thinking about what a great job they did. But it's not that simple, and we're taking credit for something the body does very naturally. So what's more important now, and what we look at in our intention with why we do these broadcasts and why we design Factor 3, is that we want to be more surgical in our approach and how we approach fitness, so that we do it with intention. There's an acronym called the SAID principle in fitness, which was specific adaptation to imposed demand. So a specific adaptation to impose demand is the criteria. So when we design Factor 3, we have very specific types of programming. It's not just general training, hoping that, if you exercise, you'll get in shape. How vague is that? We want some very specific adaptations, very specific exercises with a very specific mindset so we can actually control and forecast to a large degree exactly what your body's going to do with that movement, rather than in general hoping that at the end of the day you'll be able to do 2 more reps or you'll lose a few pounds. And we want to get away from the generic concept of what fitness really looks like. When we look at intermittent fasting, what we've done within our programming over the 90 days is actually we've built in the intermittent fasting concept with eating windows. So again, using the research by the Salk Institute, we now have we designed into our menu plans an eating window, so your calories will be designed within a very specific time to actually incur better to much more rapid fat loss. And again, some really amazing research that they were showing that almost a 30% increase in visceral fat loss caused by eating within a very specific window. And again, we found that was extraordinary. So we adopted that philosophy into our program. Also using periodic fasting we have 3/4 days. So we have part of the fasting process we use is actually to drive leptin levels up, right? And leptin, of course, it was classified historically as the anti-obesity hormone. And having leptin levels that are high enough will really encourage the body to use fat more efficiently. And those on a prolonged kind of a starvation diet or really low calorie diet will have a tendency to have very low leptin levels, which of course makes it very challenging to utilize body fat, but also spurs on an increased appetite and makes us kind of throws us into a craving state. So we learned how to play around with the scientific adjustments of leptin levels to allow you to be in a state where the body can start utilizing fat more efficiently, but also be very cautious about playing with their hormone levels to make sure that we reset them and we make sure that we're not putting you in a state, we're not setting it for failure, but learning how to use the fasting states properly. And of course, in the very last stage of it, we get into the full 24-hour, 48-hour intermittent fasting protocols and setting up with your exercise, in and around your exercise program, how do you design all those things together and still get optimal results. So again, the concept of fasting, again, it's a big conversation, but the synopsis of it really at the end of the day is that one, autophagy, which is the body's ability to utilize old broken down cellular structures, is really crucial in the anti-aging process. So at the age of 51, I believe I don't look like I'm 51 years old, and it's because of using fasting protocols by the nutrition levels that I have inside my system. These are really very crucial things because this is a fertile soil, and I'm actually making sure that I'm putting really good stuff in this so I can grow beautiful cells. And that's really the whole idea behind it. It's not about the effort, it's about the recovery. So it's so autophagy is really important. Again, not only do I want to be healthy and strong, I want to be disease-free as long as humanly possible, and I want to age very gracefully. And that's really the intention behind designing programs like this, by using protocols such as the intermittent fasting protocol, such as utilizing caloric undulation, where we balance calories up and down to adjust for the activity levels throughout the week. And the other part, of course, we also look at the psychology and the mindset of wellness and the mindset of fitness, and realizing that if we can't help you change this, you're very unlikely ever going to change this long term anyhow. And how many people do you know that have actually had successful weight loss stories but were unable to stay there? It's not because they didn't have the physical capacity, they didn't have the mental capacity to stay there. So we built into the program a type of periodic fasting for the brain, where we go in and we get the body to kind of chew up the old unused irrelevant ideas of the past, and to come up with and build brand new fresh ones. So it's, maybe a fasted brain will actually be a better brain, because if we teach it how to start anew and start with a brand new set of neurons, a brand new mental foundation, I think the results that you gain through the program, you'll actually sustain. So it's I would do your due diligence and go on the NIH, National Institute of Health, have a look around at some of the research around fasting, just to bring up your own belief and your understanding, if you can go through the material of what fasting is all about. There's some really great articles on YouTube, or some great videos on YouTube where they really talk about the fasting process, and it really is quite extraordinary. And again, the research backs up this is exceptionally good thing to do. But if you're in a disease process that's being managed by medical professionals, you really need to check with them first before you do anything like this, because putting your body in that state can have complications if you're presently dealing with a medical concern. But we're really excited to be able to share all the stuff with you in our program. So April 20th, of course, is the cutoff date for registration. September 5th is when we launch it. So you'll be allowed in the program a week prior, so you can look at all the instructional videos, look at the menus and the diets, and see how that's set up. Get accustomed to what we're asking you to do. And if you're coming as a couple, please let us know on our Facebook page. And of course, we have a special cost for couples coming in to do this program together, because we understand support within the home is crucial. Thanks for your time, and again, it's my apologies if you're getting this and not the live feed, but I wanted to make sure that we offered you some of this information anyhow to kind of move you forward on your journey through your own health and fitness, and realizing that it's just, there's a lot of amazing stuff out there, and just be careful about opinions, and just what I read and what I believe to be true and what I utilize for my own fitness and for those of my clients, of course, is true based on the information I have today. 6 months to a year's time, the truth may change in the evidence under light of new evidence, and of course we'll explore that as it come along. So I'm just excited to be in this great exploration of how do we make this thing work. And so far I've done incredible things in my own health and fitness, and hundreds and hundreds of people that have come to our programs. I'm really excited to share that with you over the next 90 days. So thanks for hanging out.